Hello. I'm making a sad video, so it's gonna be a really bumped up video. It's not everyone's cup of tea, so that's why I'm saying that right up front. I just cried for an hour, feeling sorry for myself, and I cried it all out. Lots of tears, sobbing, and coughing, and blowing my nose. And then I felt heavy, real heavy. I feel real heavy now. Real heavy. And I wanted to make a video talking about how my life is actually, not how I want to think my life is. Last night I made a video where I was grateful for the stuff I got. I got some nice things, including a rose oil that makes me feel better and everything. But the video was I was so on edge and so I have to tippy-toe around Paul. I have to be real careful what I say and do. And if I make a mistake, he yells at me. And that was visible in the video last night. And me being all like pretending to be happy but on edge and all of that. Like tippy-toeing around him and always trying to mitigate the situation. And because I was so on edge, the video was just, it's like someone trying to be happy, and then because the depression is there, the despair and desolation is there, it comes out in weird places. And so I reviewed it, and then I decided, I watched some parts again, second time, and then I decided I have to delete the video. So that's what I did, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna make another video. It's the baby dog. Yes. And just talk about all these different points. I don't want to leave any point untouched. I make this video for myself, but I'm sure that there are other people that can relate to something, to a situation like that. I still have mental illness. I still have depression. And depression can be showing itself in a very subtle way. Where you might be in denial about it, right? But the points are there, the pointers that point to depression. It is there, showing itself here and there in different ways. Okay, so the main thing that pops up when you have depression is when you feel like, oh, I'm not gonna get started with this project. Or, oh no, someone invites you to a party and you say, oh, well, what's the use? I'm just gonna be sitting there anyway, somewhere in the corner. I might just as well not even go. This is just an example, not an example for my life, because nobody invites me to a party. So this example person that I'm talking about is luckier than I am, actually. They don't even know it, that fictional person. So, yeah, it's like, what's the use, or, oh, go back to school. What's the use? Do that again. Be in front of people that have a horrified look on their faces. And do a presentation. No, thank you. Or, why don't you go shopping? Oh, what's the use? It's just always the same thing, and they don't have good stuff. And anyway, that's depression. Okay. That's definitely depression. And I'm not saying that I'm not putting blame on the person. I'm not putting blame on anything right now. I'm just putting the facts on the table. So I'm going to get into this in a moment where the issues are. Okay, there's a lot of issues in the world of humans, in the human society. I'm not talking about nature. Nature is ruthless, but there is no sadisticness in nature. There is no complete psychological derailment in nature. At least that did not exist at all. There was no psychological derailment in any living being before the human species got to a certain developmental level. Not a good developmental level. Okay, so, I don't know. It's a gradual shift. You can't really put your finger on it and say, here is the point in time on the evolutionary scale where I say this is where it started, or this is where it suddenly happened, or something. This is not a sudden cataclysmic event. Okay, it's a very, very gradual movement. The human species, in my personal view, is a mistake. That's just my personal view on it. I know that is not shared by other people's egos. The human species is a mistake. Okay, so that's kind of like putting blame on it. But it's much vaster than that. It's too vast to put a blame on people, individual people, and all of that. Because every individual person is also the result of this wider movement. okay, of development. So the farther we step out of it and look at it from the sky perspective, the better we can see it for what it is. If we're right in the middle of it, here on earth, then we're so immersed in it and so overwhelmed by it that we can't see the person for society. We can't see society for the people. We can't see really who is who and what's going on, and see the things from, we can't see the things from farther away. We can't really see the causalities and all of that, what caused this person to become sadistic, or that person become a criminal or a trafficker or whatever, so it's very complex, very, 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 very complex. All of these subjects, very complex. I would say they're infinitely complex, and that makes it very difficult, obviously, to figure this out. But I am always on the path of trying to figure this out, or trying to figure other people out. And so when we're highly sensitive people, which I am, and we live in this world that is just unbelievably cruel and selfish and controlling and all of that, and we live with someone even who is very controlling and very on edge and very not in ease, like a nervous jacket, like someone who panics at the drop of a potato on the floor or something like this, right? If we live with someone like this on a daily basis, and we tippy-toe around that person, and we have to please that person all the time and constantly apologize, then that is definitely a recipe for serious depression. Yeah, that's what it is. I gotta be completely honest here. It was a tug of war between, I was the tug of war rope between my mother and Paul that broke that rope. And I ended up taking over 100 psychopharmaceutical pills that I had in my cabinet. And then I said to Paul, I got scared and I said, I just took over 100 of the pills because I want to end my life. And he said, I better call 911. I shrugged my shoulders. I called 911. That was in LA. They came pick me up, brought me to the Daniel Freeman Hospital. And I was very lucky because there was a lady, the head nurse in the ER, that was from exactly the same area from my hometown, where I was from. Which is like, it's almost like winning the lottery, sort of like in that type of ratio of probability, that this woman, this amazing woman, what was her name? Regina, I think was her name, Regina. And she was exactly from the same area where I was from. And that was halfway around the globe. That's why it was such a so against the odds of finding someone from that region, that far away in LA, being the head nurse in the ER. And we talked German, and I was gradually getting more and more drunk from those pills, right? And gradually more outspoken and uninhibited in the ER. And I was just walking around, following her around there, as she was keeping a half of one eye on me, sort of, because knowing that what I had just swallowed before I got there, right? So I was. They also wanted to pump the stomach out. It was already too late. It had already moved further down, and so they gave me a charcoal drink that may have saved my life, maybe, so I don't know. But things took its course anyway, so it went from totally unhinged political discussions, like I was like raging against George W. Bush, real loud in the ER, and Regina was nodding her head. No, not just because she wanted to appease me. She was in full agreement with what I said. And then they put me on different monitors, because they knew that this was not good, okay? And then it was getting much, much worse, and then I was on an EKG, and I think on an EEG as well. And I had all of these electric cords on my head and on my chest. And I was on that stretcher, and there was the cardiologist, young Oriental guy. I didn't even see him because things had already taken its course. So then all of a sudden the pharma drugs started to kick in so bad that I panicked. It was more like my body panicked. It was like a subconscious type of that's another part of me that was panicking. We have different consciousness levels in us. Okay. The upper consciousness level says, "Oh, I'm done," thinking it's gonna be easy or something. Though there's other consciousness levels in us that are not okay with that decision. So, and particularly when the body goes into some kind of real weird state from drugs or poison or something, and there's 911 on the clock. That I see that 911, it always shows itself. It's a universal humor. It's a little sardonic humor. It always shows itself when I'm thinking or talking about something that is rather negative and terrible. It's like an eye wink that says, don't take things so seriously. It's not that serious. That's just an existence. It's just a headset reality, right? We're just avatars playing something here, okay? It's illusion. Reality is illusion. But it feels real enough, everything, to feel sorry for ourselves, obviously. So, but at some point, my body started to panic. I pushed forward. I thought, why can't I move? I didn't even see the cords on me. The cords ripped, all of those. I tried to sit up on that stretcher because I panicked. And I put my feet on the ground. And the ground was like some kind of, it felt like, it's hard to describe it, like you're on a planet that has real exaggerated gravitational field. It felt like there was a gravitational field under my feet that pulled me with all force down to the ground. There was no way I could withstand that gravitational pull. And it pulled me to the ground. And I don't remember screaming. It was the young Oriental, good-looking cardiologist that came in the next day into the ICU. And he was grinning, and he said, "Boy, you screamed from the top of your head when you fell to the ground." And he said that's when they all came rushing. Everyone in there, they were in other rooms, they all came rushing into that one particular space there where I was. And they put me back on that stretcher. I have no recollection of it. I was in deep unconsciousness. And it was hours later that I finally heard Paul's voice. In despair, in tears, in panic of losing me. Holding my hand, shaking, his whole body shaking. Nikki. And the sound, Nikki. Like, I opened my eyes and I saw him sitting there crying, and I couldn't even talk. He said, "Nikki, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." I didn't even accuse him of anything. But he knew. He knew that he had been yelling at me every single day. He knew he has broken that. He has torn that tug-of-war rope. He knew. My mother on the other end of the phone line in Germany telling me, "You need to do something." With Ernie, Paul's dad. And Paul's dad had a minor stroke. And he was hiding in his room, and we didn't know what to do. I didn't even know he had a stroke. I just couldn't put the pieces together. And she said, no, he's hiding in the room. He's not coming out. He's not eating. You have to do something. You need to do something. So that's the German way. That's how we were drilled. In Germany, it's actually against the law not to help someone who's potentially at risk of whatever, not being able to take care of himself. So, and I didn't need to be told. I mean, I felt sorry for him, and I told my mother about it, and I said, what should I do? Who should I call, And I called the Rural Human Services, and they came over and interrogated Paul like he's a criminal, and the lady was standing there, and I was sitting on an exercise bicycle, and the dogs were on the couches. Each dog had a couch, and she said, now where are the humans supposed to sit? I said, here, on the exercise bicycle. That made her laugh so much that she felt more at ease about our situation, and knew that someone with that much humor would, first of all, would never hurt an older person, and would also not tolerate someone else hurting an older person. So that's what they were concerned about. So it was not about us putting Ernie in danger or something, or hurting him, or doing anything bad. We cared about him, if any. Paul didn't get along with him, but we cared about him. I mean, we cared about him as we care about all beings that are in our vicinity, even if he is difficult, or if they didn't like each other. Even if Ernie has dirty hands, never washes his hands, and it was not fun and all of that, but we cared about him. But I didn't know what to do in that situation. So then she had a doctor come over. Doctor examined him, and he sure liked that, because that was a young lady. and all of that stressed Paul out so much. And then someone came over with a reverse mortgage. And all of that stressed, and Paul was so stressed about that Ernie would do that with a reverse mortgage, because then Paul would lose his half of the house. He was half owner of that house. Long story, okay, that leads up to terrible things, okay. And so all of this happening, and Paul stressed out, and then yelling at me, blaming me for all of this. Every day, if you're yelled at, every single day, day in and day out, you're yelled at, and you're yelled at. And you get mountain rocks of accusations thrown at your head every single day. A sensitive mimosa like me, a highly sensitive person like me, breaks under that. And then my mother saying, you can't just ignore it. And Paul says, don't do anything. And my mother says, you need to do something. You have to help him. Paul says, don't do anything. My mother says, you need to help him. Paul says, don't help him. That's his own fault. My mother says, you need to help him. You need to help Ernie. Paul says, don't help Ernie. And it went for weeks. But I finally, I had to. I didn't wait weeks, but I first asked Ernie what he needed, and he didn't want to come out of his room, and he stayed in bed. And so I had to make these phone calls. I didn't know who else to call, what, I can't call the police with that, but I have to call someone. And boy, did that get me in trouble with Paul. You're messing with my business, you're interfering with my life, you're ruining everything. We can lose our house here, this house, if you continue this. And then the next door neighbor was a nurse. He came over, was also hoping to get a will from Ernie. And so there's the sharks all the way. Everyone wants something. Everyone sees their opportunity. Snarky little slime sneaker crooks, and dealing with those, and then dealing with someone who's controlling and yelling. I don't know what is worse, to tell you the truth. I don't know what would be worse, to be honest here. Living with Raymond, the old Filipino guy, nurse, psychiatric nurse, next door. If I had to choose between Raymond and Paul, gotta be honest with you, I would choose Raymond. Okay. Calculated, sneaky lies. Is looking out for himself, not for others. Trying to take advantage of a situation. Yeah. Also probably very, very adamant, if not controlling, about the household, most likely. Yeah. He had a large flower collection, which I like. So if I like scenarios like this that constantly go through my head, like, would you choose Raymond over Paul? Yeah, I would. Even though Raymond was even older. Raymond was 25 years older than me. Yeah, he was already pretty old. Yeah, would have chosen him over Paul. Anytime. This is a harsh judgment. No, on Paul. It is. But I have to come to terms with the situation with Paul. Okay? Would I commit suicide living with Raymond? No. He's also a psychiatric nurse. So he was very gentle with me, always talked very gently. He knew I was mentally ill and everything. We're all mentally ill, Raymond too. We're all, every one of us, in different ways, right? In different forms. He told me one day, when I was talking alone with him in the front yard, he said he has seen those in the psychiatric hospital. Pointing to Paul, I've seen those. There are several of those. Of those that are ridden by anxiety, panic, and control, the need to control. Like a little drill sergeant who feels like if he doesn't yell the shit out of other people, he would be trampled down by society. It's tragic, all of this. I see the whole picture. I see everyone for who they are. I see Paul's situation, Paul's dilemma. I see all of that. I see how he suffers and all of that. I've given 25 years of my life to make Paul feel better, give him my assistance, my friendship, my suffering, my tears, my sweat, my blood. Am I capable of leaving him? No. No. I can't leave him. He told me he would die if I left. He said he would die from loneliness because he doesn't have any friends. When I met him, he had a couple of friends, but they were not like, it wasn't like a real close friendship with any of them. It wasn't like they would save each other's lives or something. It was like more like a long-term type of casual sitting together, watching a movie, getting up any moment and going, walking out and not coming back, and not even blinking an eye over it. Something like that. Long-term, decade long-term, casual, walk out any moment type of friendships. Acquaintanceships. I don't call that friendship. So some of these people were crazy. Some of them were actually criminals. And I had a handful of friends from the Primal Center in LA. We're also all Meshuggah. We're all crazy, mentally ill, in different ways. The people that I gathered there, those were more like the upper scale type of Meshuggah people. We're all Meshuggah, right? Doesn't matter who it's just like. We're all Looney Toonies. Whether we're playing the violin or we're playing the drum in an Elks Lodge, right? It doesn't matter. So it all has its suffering and mental illness involved. So my friend Carla, she was a cellist. I was playing the violin. I had my violin there at that time. I gave it away to the gardener's daughter later on, to my parents' gardener's daughter. She was very happy about that, including all of the music sheets and my other musical instruments, some wooden flutes and stuff. And Paul was playing the drums in an Elks Lodge and a Moose Lodge and the Cowboy Saloon and some Latin bars with some Latin bands. They kicked him out later on. He didn't fit in there at all. I don't blame them for kicking him out. He didn't ask why. He just said okay and walked out. All of that, all of this hardship, leading up to me breaking and overdosing. It was rough. It was a real rough life in LA. We have it much better now. I'm still feeling sorry for myself. He's still yelling at me every day. Every day. For the minutest things. Every day. I do something wrong. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. The ridiculous stuff, really. Absolutely ridiculous. I usually don't talk about this very much in my videos. Here and there I mention something in a more humorous light and stuff. But the daily grind of it is not humorous at all. Not at all. It's as serious as suicide. And that's the harsh reality of it. And I chose this life. My soul chose this life. Because I could have had a different life. My mother's client, my mother was a divorce lawyer, and her client was a very, very wealthy fruit merchant. And he was literally the nicest person I've ever met in my life. And incredibly wealthy. And he liked all of us. They became good friends. And he was so happy with my mother's work, and it was also well distributed. No drama and all of that was his divorce. And didn't even bother him financially because he's so wealthy. And then he delivered us. He had a real large wooden box delivered to us. It was the finest of the finest. Fresh fruits from around the globe. I don't know how they can ship that stuff so fast. But there were lychees in it, and peaches, and all kinds of amazing things, and tropical fruits, and mangoes. And I was like, oh, and I started eating those right there in the hallway. And then they came with us to Kenya on the vacation 2 times. And he had his girlfriend there with him. And I liked her very much too. And very nice lady and everything. But he liked me. Okay. He really liked me. And I felt, never crossed my mind to date him. Never occurred to me. There was my mother's client, much older than me, like 25 years older. He has a steady girlfriend, they're nice, but I could sense that he liked me. He was very, very interested. And I felt such ease around him. I felt Like that's an angel, you know. I felt so, I felt not judged. I felt like there was finally someone who who appreciated me. It was really fun with them on the vacation. They made the vacation fun. He made the vacation fun. He did. And I felt it, I felt different. I felt like there was something about him, a different aura. There was something that was not of this world. Actually, it was such easiness. Like there was no, with my parents, I'm so used to, I have been so used to being mocked. My whole life I've been mocked. For my parents, my grandfather, I've been criticized, mocked, humiliated, shamed. I thought that was normal. I didn't even know that that's actually mentally ill. I always thought I'm the mentally ill person. That's why they're finding fault with me all the time and mocking me and always criticizing, always shaming me and laughing about me also. My mother and my brother will full force laugh about me right there in the kitchen. And then when I was getting depressed, they would laugh even more. And that was my life. Okay. And then we went to Kenya with the fruit merchant, and even at the airport, at the airport restaurant, he was sitting across from me and he was looking at me all the time, the whole time. And there was a halo over him, not visible, but I could see it with my mental eye. The halo was not just over his head, the halo was all the way around his entire body. There was a very bright, light, golden halo. A purity. This man was pure. And I felt safe around him. I felt safe with him. And then, after the Kenya vacations, he wanted to arrange a dinner for my parents, and he wanted me to come too. And my parents didn't even tell me. They told me the next day after the dinner. They said, "Oh, we didn't even tell you because you were already with your other friends." And so we just told them, "Oh no, Nikki is with her boyfriends, many, right? She's with all of her boyfriends. Don't worry about it. She's a punk. They're hanging out in the punk club, punk bar, with all of her boyfriends." Trying to make me look bad to him, right? On top of it. He never asked them to bring me along again after that because he just thought that I'm not interested. A parent who is concerned for their daughter's life, they knew I was mentally ill, difficult, and here was someone who was money, who likes me, and who's kind-hearted, right? This is a chance of more than winning the lottery, right? This is a chance of a lifetime. And they blew it. They deliberately blew it. It's almost like my parents didn't want me to have a good life or a future. It's almost like it looked like. Paul would just say, they're just stupid. But the way my parents treated me was beyond stupid. That was much worse than stupid. It's not just stupid. Okay, it's like deliberately bad. That can't just be left to chance to explain it away with stupidity. Okay, there's a lot of unconscious resistance to seeing me being liked, loved, or having something good. That's what it felt like to me. When I was sick on a vacation in Kenya when I was 11 years old, long before we met the fruit merchant, my mother was about to let me die from a salmonella infection. For anyone who thinks I'm exaggerating with this, okay, I'm not exaggerating. I mean, real reluctantly. It was my dad, actually, that finally came in the room and saw how sick I was. I was skin and bones. I was just throwing up and having diarrhea from salmonella. I was white like a sheet, with dark rings under my eyes, and my dad was like, "Oh, you didn't tell me how bad it was." For days and days, they didn't call a doctor. So my dad finally went into the lobby and said, we need to have a doctor come to see my daughter. My daughter's very sick. And they immediately called for a doctor that was also there on vacation. German doctor. And he came in the room, he treated me, and he gave me the appropriate shot and all of that. And then he hollered at my mother, real angry. And he said, "Why didn't you call for a doctor sooner? Your daughter could have died." And she was like, who does she think he is? Like that. Like an evil stepmother. That's how she acted. It's a fact. It is what it is. And that's why I had such anger and rage against her my whole life. That's why nothing comes from nothing. Okay. I'm not just on the phone with accusations for no reason. So there's a reason for it. But the accusations that I threw at her, from then or later on, once I was an adult, that didn't help her. That didn't make her say sorry. That didn't make her have an insight. It just made her retract even more into her own mental illness. That's all it did. Okay. The food merchant is dead now. My mother's dead. I don't even know what happened to my dad. Never heard from them again. I don't know what my brother is doing, whether my brother is still alive, because I told my brother, if he continues on that trajectory. I told my brother exactly what's gonna happen. I told my brother that his girlfriend and her pimp husband had plans for him. Okay. I told him that she was gonna be the housekeeper there next. Okay. Elbowed herself in. Gold digger. With a plan. Okay. And she would make him an obedient slave, which he already was. Then she would slowly poison my dad, like she did with my mother. Then then my brother would inherit the entire inheritance. Had already gotten me kicked out of the will. My brother did it. My brother signed me out of the will, which should be illegal to do. They probably bribed people there at the courthouse. And then they would have sold everything. And then she would have taken my brother to South Africa. That's where they're from. And then she would have made him buy a large mansion there. Or made him buy a large mansion anywhere on the planet. And then she would have, but in South Africa she would get away with all of that. And then that's what I figured, what would happen, the sequence. And then she would get married to him, and then she would murder him the same way. And then no one would do investigation, because they don't do investigations with white people in South Africa. The white people have no protection from anything. They're killing white people all the time. And although the girl is white too, her husband is Middle Eastern, like a Middle Eastern trafficker type of person. And then she and her husband would move into that house and have the entire inheritance for themselves that were from my parents. Okay. And probably many other people's inheritances. And they did it to other people as well. So after I told him that, long time ago, several years ago, I told him that on Facebook. I said, this is the sequence. So this is your future. Is that the trajectory you want to stay on? He had a nervous collapse after I told him that. And he said, I'm throwing it all away now. I'm sending you all the papers now. You do this. I'm done with my life. Like he was gonna end his life or something. And then I felt sorry again for him, because, I care about him. So I said, and then he accusing him of being a psychopath. So then I felt sorry for him. Then I kind of retracted and I said, no, I don't mean you. I mean your girlfriend. But he is obviously too, right? If he enables this, if he goes along with that, what would you call him, right? A psychopath enabler, at least, if not psychopath. Or a drug addict caused psychopath, right? There are some people, they may not be psychopaths, but once they become drug addicts, they have similar characteristics as a psychopath, because they put the drug on their number one priority. and everything else is trailing far behind. So then there's no more love, no more compassion, no more empathy, all for the drugs. And I think that they were selling him drugs, these people, and he was dependent on that, and they got him completely like a slave. That's what happened. So anyone who tells me, "Oh, you don't know what suffering is," you have no idea. Okay. To tell me you don't know what suffering is. So I do. I know what suffering is. Yeah, I'm shining it away. Okay. I turn it off. Okay. I'll turn it off.